Hello, everyone. I'm Annie Gibbins, and you're listening to Memoirs of Successful Women, the podcast where you get to hear candid conversations with fascinating women from around the globe who share aspects of their business and life journey, how they measure their success, and what they have learnt along the way. Hello and welcome to Memoirs of Successful Women. Today I'd love you to meet Angela Saint-Hill. And Angela is a passionate traveller and foodie. And who wouldn't want to be that? She has overcome a variety of mindset blocks to be able to travel solo, both domestically and internationally, since 2015. And while her travels have stalled during COVID, she's been able to overcome another mindset block in regard to fulfilling a lifelong dream of wanting to be in the travel industry. So she's now heading her own online course. She's got a blogging business that she focuses, and it's all rooted on equipping and empowering women to make their bucket list travel a reality with ease and flow. So welcome to the program, Angela.
Thank you for having me, Annie. What an introduction. I love it.
Oh, it's so great to have you because two things I love are travel and food. But I must admit, as a woman who has traveled quite a lot of places in the world, the thought of doing that solo really does make me stop and think, what would I do differently? And would I even embark on the journeys that I've already done with hubby and with other ladies? And so I'd love to chat to you more about that as we do today in this episode. So, first of all, what does travel mean to you as a travel expert? How do we actually even define, travel, when we think of going on our travels?
Yeah, I think it's just something that I've evolved into over my time of traveling. It's not something that's just supposed to be like, okay, one size fit all.
Yeah.
It's really just something that aligns with you. So if you're an adventure traveler, then that's great travel for you. If you're one that likes maybe to take in the arts, that's great travel. It's really like what aligns with your interest and getting out of your comfort zone. That is the definition of travel to me. It's not just like, okay, like, I'm going to go to this destination because everyone says you have to go there. And then that's the only way you can travel. No,
Yeah.
there's so many ways and so many avenues. It's just about getting out there
Yeah.
first and foremost.
Yeah. That's true, really, isn't it? Because we often think of if you go traveling, it's got to be far away, right? That's sort of a default feeling. I was like, oh, well, if it's local, it's not really traveling, it's not really exploring. And so there's one aspect of, yeah, how far away do you have to do? What sort of modes of travel are you talking about? We often think of we have to travel on a plane, for example, to get to this amazing destination. And so, but we don't, do we? We can actually go about exploring our own backyard, but it's the challenges, it's the pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone that really makes each journey really exciting and rewarding, don't you find?
Yeah, exactly. So even just talking about, I live in South Florida, like just going maybe an hour north and going to Delray Beach and
Yeah.
enjoying the beach culture there, that's still traveling because before I was just mainly in Miami. And then I was like, well, I can drive to these places. So let me
Yeah.
explore them. And then when I went to Delray Beach, it was beautiful, so serene, cute little beach town. You can just like walk right up to the beach, like 15 minutes from like where you park, and everyone is just really relaxed. So it's almost like a mini vacay, like, if you're actually just traveling on a plane somewhere, but it's really like just an hour away from me. So those are the kind of travels that are amazing too.
Hmm. So, why did you have mindset blocks? What blocks did you have about being able to then start thinking, okay, I should start traveling by myself, solo travel?
Yeah, so the biggest one was financial because I had my travel dreams when I was in high school and college. So I'm just like, okay, I really want to go. But as a struggling college student, especially, you're working with limited funds. So I couldn't really do the traveling then. And even though they had study abroad trips at my college, it was about $5,000, $6,000. Like I couldn't manage that. So I was just thinking like, okay, I probably won't travel until I'm about 30 or so, because that's when you think, okay, I'll be settled in a job and everything else. And then I just thought to myself, you know what? I really want to travel. So I'm just going to find a way. And then I ended up doing so much research to kind of budget my travels and then
Mm.
was able to start going. And then I never stopped.
So now how far have you traveled? Definitely before COVID. How many countries have you been to or different areas? How do you measure your travels?
Yeah, so I'm not really like a country number person or anything. Like I just really go by experiences. So in terms of places I've been to places in the US, Canada, Mexico, Switzerland, and the UK.
Beautiful, beautiful. I'm a bit like that
Mhm.
too. I notice some people have got like these little maps, and it's almost like you tick off, and you can even buy them here in Australia. You can color in the countries you've been to, like
Right,
it's a badge of honor, right? It's like, oh, well, I've been to whatever, 10 countries, 20 countries, 57 countries. And so it becomes this like, oh, well, therefore you've traveled. Whereas I love what you've said there, and I'm also finding that as well. That's been a joy of COVID actually. Go, yeah, where can I travel that's actually, that's right, an hour away, 2 hours away, that you
right,
can go and explore your own backyard. And often you just get completely dazzled by what there is. Do you know what I mean? Just because you flew somewhere far away doesn't mean that that's going to be any better or amazing. Or also, if you've been to that one destination because everyone says you have to be there, doesn't mean that you've really experienced that, the whole aspects, the depth of what that culture is, right?
yeah, exactly. And I think that's just five of those countries and like really getting immersed in the cultures. And most people just give you service of like, oh yeah, like I actually be with the locals experiences rather than members.
Sorry, Angela, my internet just dropped out there. I'll get you to have a little chat again and I'll edit it later.
I know, right? Yes. So, is it okay to go now?
Yep, go now.
Okay, yeah. So in terms of country numbers, I kind of don't like it either because you could ask someone, hey, of those 50 countries that you went to, can you tell me the experiences you had in five of them? And actually like immersing in the local culture and like, what about the food? Like, what can you actually do there? And most people will probably give you surface level stuff. I'm like, no, like I want to know like the meat of everything. So that's why I go for experiences rather than a number.
Yeah. Oh, totally, totally. So when you started doing this back in 2015 and went, you know what? That's right. These $6,000 trips are just not going to be possible for me, which let's face it, that's most people's reality. And then, you had that sort of big moment of, oh, okay, well, looks like I'm not going to do anything till I'm 30, which is really, the classic extreme of if I can't do the massive thing, I can't do anything. And then
Right.
this big shift went, oh my gosh, you know what? I can actually do little bite-sized chunks. I can actually do things, a little bit far away, or I can do thrifty trips, which has led to your business now on how do we
Right.
actually get around. So let's start there then on what were the biggest blocks for you when you started traveling by yourself? Was it the organization? Was it the cost, because singles often have to pay more than couples? Was it the safety aspect? What were the big things that made you suddenly think, oh, okay, should I go by myself?
Yeah, so it's a combination of all of those things actually, because especially if you're a solo person, for most packages, you have to pay like a solo supplement. So
Yeah.
like let's say the doubles, if you're like a couple, maybe it's $3,000, but then for a single, it's probably 4,005 or 4,500. I'm like, well, why am I paying 1,500 more just to go by myself?
Yeah.
So there was that. And then two, it's the notion of, being on your own too. Kind of fear like, okay, I'm, on my own. I'm not with anyone. Am I really going to have fun with myself? So it's getting comfortable with yourself and then just organization too, because I had never planned my own trips before. It was namely my parents that was planning all the trips and I was just tagging along. But now
Yeah.
for going solo, I'm like, I actually have to plan everything, like go from A to Z and plan it all and then try to organize it. So I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my God, how am I going to do this? But then after a couple times, you get really proficient at it. And then you can just, it's almost like the back of my hand. Like I just know the back of my hand.
Yeah, it's like, and that represents anything new that takes you out of your comfort zone. That's right. The beginning, you're like going, "Oh my gosh!" Like that's right. You know, how do you make all of this happen? And then the more you actually just get focused in on it, and then start experiencing and trial and error, you then perfect your craft, if you like. You sort of get better and better
Right.
at it. You go, "Oh my gosh, I don't even need lists." It'd be like me hiking now. I can just go. I'm going the next day on a 6-day multi-day hike. I just know what I have and I stuff it all in the bag. And someone else would be like, "Oh my gosh, don't you have to
Exactly.
have a list? Don't you have to plan for weeks?" And I'm like, "No, I just know what goes where." Right. And you would be like that now
Right.
on your mini adventures, or being actually going, okay, what sort of adventure are you having? Is it active? Is it more foodie? Is it more, meeting people? Where will I stay? How do you approach that for yourself, when you start looking at an area that you'd like to visit?
Yeah, so I usually do a hybrid approach. So I plan out some of my activities. Of course, I plan out my accommodations and everything, but I usually leave some things also for on ground. So maybe I'll have like a few restaurants I want to go to, maybe a couple places I want to hit, like maybe a museum or something. But then as I'm like walking around, especially if you're doing a walking tour, those are a really great introduction to any city. And then when you're with your tour guide, they could recommend like, hey, like, there's this great cafe here, or maybe you can go to this destination. And then you start walking around and then you just see like little things that you're interested in. You're like, like, I can keep that in mind as a note for like maybe a day trip or something. So a hybrid of, pre-planning, but then also on the ground stuff.
I love that. I absolutely love it when that's right. It's all about being there and moving, right? You sort of
Yeah.
just go, that's right. Sometimes you're so focused on the destination and what other people have told you that it's often when you go down those little back alleys, right? It's often when you go a little bit off the path that you suddenly go, "Oh my gosh, this is where the people actually are. This is where the
Exactly.
real food is. This is the non-tourist version of the place that I'm at." And I often find the gems are right there, right? Do you find that with the food and culture?
Exactly. And then sometimes like, especially if you're on a budget or something, finding those little gem places too, that can actually save you a lot of money because if you're in a super tourist area, they're going to raise the prices for tourists. But if you're actually going down those little back alleys, then you can get great deals because you're actually buying from the locals and it's not like a huge touristy type area. So it works
Yeah.
in that way as well.
So how have you taken this love of travel to suddenly in a moment of COVID, which is like the worst time to then be starting a business, if I may be frank, on tourism? How did you sort of take it from years of experiencing, okay, from 2015, you now go, "I'm an expert solo traveler. I dig this. This is me. I can go anywhere, anytime, get into it. And now I want to actually start making this possible to help other people, because it's all about then
Yeah.
passing on what you've learnt and you love, right? What made you think, gee, at COVID, that would be the best time for you to do that?"
Yeah, it was actually quite a surprise because I left my job. I was in a hospital job for 5 years, and I left that job because I was like, okay, this is a dead end job, so I need something else. So I left it in February 2020, and I was thinking like, okay, I'm gonna find a new job, better opportunities. Then COVID hit, and I was like, okay, there's no more job searching.
Mm,
So what am I gonna do now? So then I looked into online businesses and everything, and I thought to myself, what actually can I contribute to the market that I'm really proficient at?
yeah.
And I was like going through thinking of things, and then I'm like, travel, because I've been solo traveling since 2015. And then I actually did like mini itineraries for my friends. And then I had so many people in general asking me, Angie, like, how do you do these travels that you do and just do it so easily? So
Yeah.
then I was like, well, instead of having to relay it thousands of times to people, I was like, well, let me just funnel all the knowledge into one resource that I can actually, be able to give to people.
Yeah.
And then they can, from that, be able to craft their own custom itineraries. Now, it's not the case that I'm trying to take away like travel agents' jobs or whatever, but
Mm.
it's the case. I feel like people should just have at least some stepping stone to be able to plan their travels and not feel like I have to pay thousands of dollars just to even get maybe an hour or two from my house type thing.
Yeah, I love that. So that led you to then actually having an online course. And I've got obviously a whole suite of online courses. And I love that because unlike, in your context, a travel agent who, yeah, can say, where do you want to go? And I'll book the logistics. There's so much more to the trip than just getting the flights, just getting the accommodation. They're like little parts of it. But with an online
Right.
course, you can actually go and say, okay, that's right. Or adapt, you can also adapt it to your own context, but that's
Right.
right. Where do you want to go? Why do you want to go there? What aspects are you wanting to include in that holiday? How would you measure its success? All those sorts of aspects, which, would be in all varieties of online courses. So I love that. And so now, so how was it also then just suddenly not only starting a business during a challenging time, but then even creating the course? Did you have to go back to what, your thought when you started? That's often the hard way, is because people are at that point where you were in 2015. So you've almost
Right.
got to channel that, right? To actually go, that's right. What was I thinking? What do I need? What's the step-by-step requirements? How did you go about that?
Yeah, so I pretty much had the skeleton because I was like, okay, I'm gonna base this on a whole itinerary. So going from like your flights all the way down to your budgeting and everything else. So that was easy to make that skeleton. But then I think the parts where I had to dig a little deeper was just like, okay, what kind of tips do I want to include for my own travel? So, okay, like safety tips, how to use shopping portals to save like, more money on things you're already buying, different kind of like cards I use to get perks and everything. So I had to like dig a little bit deeper into those, but the overall
Mhm.
skeleton was pretty easy.
Mm. And now how has that been received? How do you then engage with those people who do your course? Do they do it just online, you don't get to meet them, or do you actually connect with them and be able to answer further questions? How does your business operate?
Yeah. So how I run the course is that it's pretty much a self study, but then I do have enabled throughout the whole course. If anyone has any questions, they'd be talking directly to me. So it's almost like I'm giving mini coaching as well. So anytime you're going through the modules and you drop like a question in the question box, it's going to be me on the other end answering. So you
Yeah.
kind of get those like um, dual aspects. So you get, okay, like a DIY travel plan, the DIY travel planning process that I have, but then you also get my support as you're going through. And then that's pretty much lifetime access. So you'll always have that like mini coaching from me, and then also any updates I do, because for travel, things are always changing. So yeah, lifetime updates for that as well.
Mm, mm. So awesome. Love that. Love that model. So when people have got all their sort of their travel plans organized and that sort of thing, one common thing is they often just have this feeling, particularly women, of going, should I really take the time out? Is it okay? It's a bit like a treat, right? Sort of this self-indulgent. And once you get into it and addicted to it, you're like going, oh my gosh, like I'm so worth it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to miss this for anything. That's probably like the area that you and I are both in. But often I find, those that I coach kind of go, oh yeah, I did want to have a plan a trip, or I even organized it, but I haven't gone. And then I'll dig a little bit and they'll go and say, oh, it just feels a bit luxurious. It feels like even if it's a cheaper option, it's still money spent, right? What's your perspective on that? Do you find that with people that they suddenly balk because they feel actually it's kind of like almost self-indulgent, like to treat themselves in that way?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to tread because I kind of feel like that's such a big block for people. Like, yeah, like, am I being too indulgent? Like, especially if you're going on your own and you're not bringing like maybe your significant other or something. Like, should I really be doing this? And I say yes, because it's almost the case. Like, okay, it's a very commonly used quote, but you need to fill your own cup. And I feel like if you're
Mm,
doing something like traveling and you're actually tapping into that part of yourself, you know, whether it's your self-awareness, like, it empowers you so much, you get so much confidence. And I feel like when you actually take that time and treat yourself, then you can almost give like 10x back to
Yes.
your significant others, like maybe your kids, maybe your friends, because you're actually doing something that lights you up and makes you really happy. So
Mm.
then when you're all filled up, then you can like impart that to other people more effectively than if you're feeling like really down and everything, then that's the kind of energy you're going to give to other people, and
Mm.
you're going to get really depleted as a result.
Yeah. I definitely find that I make my little trips getaways. I just had one a couple of weeks ago to Tasmania, which is the bottom island of Australia, and I went
Right. Yeah.
trekking
Mhm.
for 6 days with some ladies. It was pretty hardcore trekking through the snow, and with a big, 18-kilo backpack. So that was more of an extreme
Right.
trek. And then, also have holidays in lovely locations and resorts and so forth. So it's a variety of trips for different reasons. It's interesting what we were chatting about before too, because when I went, I sort of found this around 2016, similar time to you, that I had got into adventure trekking, and I had an opportunity to go with some ladies to Nepal, and we ended up going on a trek
Ah,
to Amadablam base camp. And so I'm like going, oh my gosh, like, should I, mum of five, with responsibilities, had not spent that much money? It was a commit, right? And so there was the physical challenge and the cultural challenge and the food challenge and all that sort of stuff. But it was kind of like,
right.
is this okay that I went? I didn't go by myself. I went with them. But anyway, so I got over it and I went, and it actually did really change my life. And then I came back so energized, like you said, so challenged and changed in some ways, that actually hubby noticed and went, oh my gosh. And then he goes and says, like a month later, babe, I know you've already done it, but I'm now exploring all your photos. You look so happy and I love the environment. Do you mind if we do Everest Base Camp next year?
Oh,
And
I
I'm like
love
going, oh,
that.
let me think about that for a millisecond. So we went back and then we did a 21-day hike together. It was amazing.
Wow.
But that's exactly it. You suddenly go, wow, I would have thought, I had those feelings, and those feelings are real because, we spend so much time, particularly, mums who sort of like
Right.
every cent is, like, your kids extracurricular or, schooling and other activities. And even for ourselves, we're kind of like going, even if you're not, then you go, okay, well, I'm still saving for an apartment or something, sensible. And
Right.
then when you
Exactly.
actually go, it's often funny, like, when you go on a trip, some people go, oh, how much did that cost? It's really interesting because it's financial. I'm like going, oh my gosh, it cost what it was worth was every cent, like, it's kind of like interesting about, is it a cost as in, that you'd write off, rather than you actually go, yeah, it was a cost, but I actually saw it as an investment, So for me, I'm totally aligned with you. I see all travel as an investment because it really does just grow you, right? I think it always changes you. That every location you go to changes you if you really immerse yourself in that environment.
Yeah, I think that's just something I thought about, especially in COVID, because I was thinking to myself, like, yeah, I could have actually saved a lot of the money that I used for traveling. But like you said, it was an investment. And just really thinking of myself from 6 years ago to now, it's a completely different person. And I love the person that I've grown into. And that wouldn't have happened if I actually didn't take the steps to travel
Mm.
and really experience, meet the people that I've met, and then just, I don't know, just really embrace like all the different kind of like cultural aspects that I've been able to be
Mm.
immersed in.
Mm. How did you develop your confidence in that area? Because I know a lot of people will be listening in and go, okay, but I wouldn't be brave enough. I wouldn't be confident enough to go. I could do the travel. There'll be other people listening going, okay, I could do the organizing. I can get there. It's not about that. It's actually getting out by yourself and go, okay, now I've got to interact with people. I've got to meet people. I've got to ask locals, where are the local sites? I've got to ask them, which restaurant would you go to? What's off the beaten track? How did you grow and develop your areas of confidence?
Yeah, it's really the case. I think I can just boil it down to staring fear in the face. So naturally, I'm an introverted person. And I'm like, okay, when I went on my first trip in 2015, I was like, okay, I've never been to Cincinnati, Ohio. That was where my first trip was. And then I was meeting people I actually met online. So I'm like, okay, I've never met these people. I've only spoken to them on Twitter. So I'm meeting new people for the first time. I'm going on this solo trip, and I've never been to this state. So it was three fears staring me in the face, but I just had so much passion and just such a want to travel that I was like, okay, I'm going to stare fear in the face and just do it.
Hmm.
And then after that, I was like, okay, this trip was amazing. And I was like, if I wouldn't have taken this trip, I would have been remiss for such a long time.
Yeah.
So, especially like when I took my trip to London, I was super afraid because I'm like, okay, I'm going across the pond. I don't know
Oh,
what the customs are like. I don't know what the currency is like. But again, I was just like, okay, I really want to go. So stepped into the fear and then I went and I was like, oh my God, like it actually turned out great. So it's just like those taking those little steps and just like facing those fears because a lot of people can say like, okay, like what if XYZ happens and like, it's something bad, but hey, what if XYZ happens and it's actually really fabulous and
yeah.
it's great and it just really shows you, okay, like I can actually take on these challenges. So I think it's better to take those leaps than like staying back type thing.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And well done for you doing that. And I often find that's right. The what ifs probably don't happen, but even when they do, you learn so much from them. When you get lost in a new city, well, what does it do? It makes you suddenly get out the maps, get an expert at the phone
Right,
apps, get be bold and just ask people. And sometimes they're super, super friendly and it's amazing. And other times they're kind of like rude and you go, okay, you learn about people, like you got to go with the flow, right? You suddenly
right.
go, okay, where's a great restaurant? And you accidentally find the wrong one. And then, after you leave and weren't that impressed, you suddenly realize, just around the corner was the one you wanted. And all this sort of stuff, but that's all part of the adventure. It adds to the stories, it adds to the learning, it helps you with your future trip planning. You suddenly go, oh, I'm not going to
Exactly.
be caught out like that again, all that sort of thing. It's like you're so close to a destination, you can't find it. Do you get frustrated or do you actually just go, no, I'm just going to ask? So, there's so many opportunities to learn and grow. And I think, the best ways, I believe, obviously, as a coach, is to just really start stretching yourself in that comfort zone and really,
Right,
just go, well, where could it lead me? What's the worst thing? You're not going to die. You're just going to go, oh my gosh, I feel a bit uncomfortable or I don't
right.
know what to do next. But there's always answers. There's always support. And for me, travel is always the best experience. So what have you learned about food by your travels? Do people approach food differently in different areas? What have you noticed?
Yeah, it's really funny sometimes because, thinking of somewhere like London, for instance, you think like, okay, like it's a mix of cultures, but then it almost feels like the US a little bit because you see a lot of the commercial places. But then, yeah, you do have to dig a little bit deeper. And then you're like, oh, yeah, like, there's this cuisine, like, let's say it's like Indian. And then maybe you can go like a few blocks down. Then you have like Thai. Then you have like all these other things. So that's really cool. And then it's just really love the communal aspect. They have like these big, like long communal tables, and you just see like everyone like having like, let's say like 10 different dishes or something, and everyone's like picking, sharing. So I think that is just so beautiful. Like when you just have a really great meal and then you can just kind of like chat, bullshit, like whatever. And you're just really enjoying your time with people instead of it just being like, okay, it's great to be on your own, but then I don't know, like maybe the food tastes even better when you're with
Oh.
people because like, you're really joyful and then you're just like present there with the food type thing.
Oh, I find food connected to social elements always enhances the flavor, right? So,
Right.
that's it. I think in most cultures around the world, food is about actually the opportunity. Yes, it's to sustain you, but it's actually your time of coming together. And a lot of Western culture, that's it. We sit by ourselves or we sit in our little family group. And that's the great thing when you travel to a lot of different places, you can actually go, that's right. Like, how about where we're just here in community? We're actually sharing, we're chatting, people are laughing. One, you eat better because you actually eat slower.
Right.
While you're chatting about your travels and where you've been and this and that, whatever. And you also experience different types of food, which is great. Sometimes it might give you a tummy ache, but you adjust. Makes you a bit more bold. And but I love that social aspect. And through that, often, I'm sure you found that by the end of the meal, you've suddenly got new ideas of where to go the next day and what to try and what other people have experienced and all of that. The blessings actually roll on, right? Whereas if you stayed by yourself and read your little trip planner book, you're still by yourself. So it is that moment of going, hey, take it. for everything that it can offer. When you get an opportunity, which is travel, which you've saved up for, which you've planned for, which you've invested in, how about you really just capitalize on that and go, oh my goodness, well, who else am I going to meet on my journey, and what is it going to bring me?
Yeah, exactly. And just thinking too, like for Mexico, when I went to Mexico, this might be gross to some people, but I never thought I'd eat bugs. I was like, why do people eat bugs? Like, I'm never going to do that. But
Yeah.
then I was waiting outside the Frida Kahlo Museum because they
Hmm.
had a really long queue. I guess it was a really popular day, and I think they had admission tickets like 50% off or something. So it was a really long queue. And there's this guy actually selling like his roasted cockroach, no, not cockroaches, crickets, his roasted crickets, like out of like a little basket. And I was like, you know what? I love crickets because I actually had them here in Miami. So I was just like, okay, like here, like give me like a little bag of those crickets. And it was almost like just eating nuts, like on the side of this road, like waiting in the museum. And I never thought I would do that, let's say 6 years ago. I'd be like, no, like get that away from me.
I'm not eating bugs. I know. I've had a similar experience, and you just go, wow. In some parts of the world, they'll fry anything, and you kind of go, okay. Actually, it's interesting when you know it, and it's also interesting when you don't know it. I remember when we were in, I think we're in Thailand, and we were at this tiny little roadside sort of diner thing, and we just went and said to the waiter, which I'm sure you've done too, is like, just give me what do you like? Give me your choice. So you don't even know what you're getting. We came and we had this soup, and I'm like, wow, it's like this pink soup. It's really weird. And we're eating it. Da, 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 da. We get right to the end, feeling fine. And then we go, what did we eat? And he goes, pig's blood soup. And
See?
I'm like, oh, that made me feel sick. But it did it before I knew, and obviously he thought that was a delicacy that, his foreigners would love to try. And I'm like, oh, that was a real, mind bender. Anyway, we survived. We didn't get sick besides the thought of it. And then, bugs didn't seem that bad after that. And but it's all part of the journey, right?
Yeah, see, the more you know. And then it's just kind of like, hey, especially if you don't tell me and it looks appetizing, 9 out of 10 times I'll probably eat it.
Exactly. Don't give me all the information. I'm better without that. So how do people find you, Angie? How do they reach out and do your course and just get themselves more empowered and more equipped, ready to be able to start going on some little adventures?
Yeah, so the best way to connect with me is on Instagram, and it's at the Flexitarian Travels.
Flexitarian
So
travels. I love that.
yeah, yeah. So I do travel tips, and I do like inspirational stuff too, just to kind of like get people hyped and be like, hey, like, your next travel adventure isn't too far. It's just about getting out there and doing.
Yeah, exactly. Make a move, get out and do, act,
Yeah.
even small. So don't bite off too much at the beginning, don't freak yourself out. You don't need to leap out of that comfort zone. Exactly. Just, follow
Exactly.
Angie, get some tips, and just plan a little mini adventure, a mini little travel trip, somewhere, just out of local that you haven't been before. And then just start getting your confidence up, getting yourself equipped, and then the world's your oyster. Once everything opens up again, you'll be just amazed. And there's lots of cheap options on what you can do and how you can do it, and there's a global community out there ready to support you and cheer you on, right? People love it. Once you get into it, they're like, oh my gosh, you should try that, or you should meet this person, or you should go to this website. It's amazing, right?
Yeah, definitely. That's how I started. I didn't go into the big pond initially. Like I took those baby steps, and it's not like anyone was judging me like, oh, like, she's just going on these small trips. No, I just took it at my own pace, and then now I'm at the place where I can just do it all, anything that I want to. So yeah, you can just go at your own pace, but just enjoy the ride as you're going along.
Mm, fantastic. Great advice. Well, fantastic. Well, everyone, I will leave all of Angie's details on my podcast platform. Thank you so much for sharing with me today, Angie. It's been really, really fascinating. And well done you for starting a business in a pandemic. I am super impressed.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Memoirs of Successful Women. You can find me at anniegibbons.com, where you can download my free resources, get connected on social, and check out my online magic transformation program. If you love this show, feel free to subscribe to future episodes and, of course, share it with your friends. I'll see you again soon, and until then, happy podcasting.